All right, Sean, in the length of a tweet or a tweet thread, what did we talk about this episode?
We talked about how AI is going to affect marketing teams, how it should change the way you think about building a team and hiring and the what a good candidate looks like. We talked about some of the downsides or risks or threats of AI. And kind of, I think, painted a rosy picture about how excited we should all be about this.
Yeah, I think the future is bright. I think the future is very bright. So. I'm Ibby Syed.
I'm Sean Collins.
And this is Numbers and Narratives.
So I've been thinking a lot about hiring and building the team. And I think the mistake that I have seen made before and that I think I have made previously, see, got a thing to fidget with, is you hire for the role you need exactly now because you're feeling pain, but you don't think about how that role is going to evolve over time, what that career map is going to be for that marketer, what are your needs going to be in a year or 2 years versus what they are now, how is your tech stack going to change that, etc. And I think one of the most interesting places where we know there's going to be change is in the capability and applications of AI. And so I've been thinking a lot about what does that do in terms of changing the skill set and knowledge and type of person that we hire, both for what their role will be, but also like what will make you good at adapting to this AI-driven world of figuring out creative ways to solve problems. And so that's what we're going to talk about today is AI, what it means for marketers, what it means for organizations, and then, we'll see where it goes.
And I think it should be said that like AI is actually like a pretty, I don't know, you can think about it as a nebulous term because like to a software engineer, like AI means like machine learning, it means like training models, all that kind of stuff. That's not exactly what we're talking about. The thing that we're talking about is, using some of these AI-driven technologies or being what's called like a prompt engineer, going to something like a ChatGPT, a Claude. There's this crazy app. Sean, you might have seen this. It's called Suno, Suno. It's like this music creator, Suno.com. It's like a music creator app. And you basically just like, you have to use English language to tell a system to do a thing. And that's kind of what we're talking about when we are talking about AI. It's it's not like a technical term. It's more of like hey, use one of the very many tools that have come out in the last year or so to do a job.
Yeah, this is not for ML engineers.
What are some of the aspects, like what do you think some of the aspects are of marketing that can be improved by AI? And can you give some examples?
Similar to the way that everything can be improved by hiring or bringing on a smart, talented person. I think every aspect of marketing can be improved through the smart, deliberate application of these LLMs and AI tools. I think the question is like to what extent. But I think like maybe like starting at part of the reason I was thinking about this is the idea of like being a channel expert at something and how much that has changed over even the course of the short time that I've been a professional marketer, but going back, even farther, you think about channels like Google ads or back in the day, Facebook ads, now Meta ads. You think about SEO, you think about web analytics. All of these things used to require CRM and kind of demand gen and lead nurturing and stuff like that. All of these things used to require a really high level of skill, not just at marketing, but also at using a platform. Meta ads, you used to be able to target down to crazy amounts and retarget and build kind of ad funnels deliberately. There used to be like a bunch of crazy things you could do. And all of these platforms are becoming more and more approachable, I think, for the everyday person. And they're building features to make it easier to use. They're building AI-driven tools about what is the right creative, what is the right ad placement, when should they spend more and spend less. Like you used to be writing scripts in Google Ads about like bid adjustments based off of time of day or day of week. Like that was all done by the Google Ads manager, was writing like literally JavaScript rules and code within Google Ads to power all this. And now Performance Max is just doing it, right? So that starts to change what the most necessary skills are, from being a platform expert to being a good marketer who understands your product, understands your audience. And you still need, like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not saying like anybody can just show up and instantly be great at Google Ads or Facebook ads. Like there's still a level of skill and knowledge and expertise that comes with that is necessary.
But that skill and knowledge has changed from knowing the platform and having to sort of create the infrastructure to, being able to tell a good story, being able to understand your audience and figure out, like, you get to like do, it seems like you get to do higher level thinking and sort of like higher level adjustments, and the things that you're testing are no longer, as you said, like time of day, that sort of thing, but rather, hey, this imagery is better than this imagery, or this copy is better than this copy, based on the fact that, oh, I want to try selling to 21 to 25 year olds rather than the 41 to 45 year olds that I'm selling to so far.
Yeah, I think so. And I think what's interesting about this revolution is, normally I think people start building for the enterprise, and enterprise gets all the great stuff, and then it scales down to SMB as, copycat brands duplicate things and see the opportunity as really, lower business, because they're not as good at building a product. So they're going to build to the SMB market a little bit less good of a product. I think this one's actually, the opposite, where we see smaller companies, smaller teams are the ones who are enabled by AI faster, because they inherently have to be scrappier. Your teams have to be more jack of all trades, or you're running a bunch of channels, and so you're going to be looking for these. We can call them shortcuts, but I think that kind of comes as like a loaded term, but enablers that will enable you to do more faster with fewer resources. Whereas, if you're a major enterprise company, you're probably okay having like a copywriter and a Google Ads expert. And honestly, you probably have a few people on Google Ads and a different person on Bing Ads, right? And so like, I think that you feel the pain a little bit less when you're already a large organization and a large team. And also the incremental gains they're going to be getting are smaller. And so maybe it's okay that it's still a channel expert kind of doing that and looking for those incremental opportunities. Whereas when you are a SMB, a mid-market account, you are looking for like things that can move the needle significantly. You're looking for, how can I start to personalize? What are interesting touch points? And so I think it moves less from being a channel expert for these SMB and mid-market businesses, where like, if there's the old expression, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? If you are an email marketer, the solution to every problem is an email. Whereas if you are a Facebook ads person, you're not like, send an email about that. You're like, okay, here's how I can retarget them and get some ads going to them, right? And so I think that this starts to empower people that wouldn't think of themselves as marketers, or would think of themselves as like a generalist, now can be really powerful, because they can focus on understanding the problem, understanding the audience, understanding the brand, and figuring out how do you just do cool things and provide value at scale.
I'm not a marketer, but, I have to post things on LinkedIn. I have to generate sort of like leads for the company. And, sort of talking about the product or using our product in public is one of the ways to do that. But I think 5 years ago, I guess for folks that don't follow me on LinkedIn, the content that I put out are usually deep dives into companies. So what my company does is we sit on top of data about your business and can tell you like what your customers are happy about, what your customers are not happy about. Good way of marketing that is to take companies that are in vogue right now, like we did Chipotle 2 weeks ago, and we're like, hey, what percentage of Chipotle's customers are complaining about the portion size is getting smaller, and we spent some time on that, created some assets, wrote some copy, did some analysis. And what's interesting about that is a couple of years ago, I would have had to, become better at writing copy and become better at creating that imagery and doing the analysis and pulling all the data. But interestingly, all of those individual pieces make it so I don't have to be good at that anymore, right? Like the imagery the imagery and assets can be created by Midjourney. The copy, obviously, we write, but the actual content of the copy is something that can be developed by our platform, which is an AI platform. The analysis itself, like, we don't really have to do that much of anymore. We, put it into our bot, and the bot outputs the data. So what I can do is I can spend fundamentally more of my time doing these analyses and really testing, hey, what kind of messaging, what kind of content, what kind of value is actually landing with the people that we're trying to talk to, and how do my impressions change? Versus like before, I think it would have probably been quite a lot slower, and there would have been quite a lot more things to actually create physically in my head. And I think it like takes a lot of those elements and allows us to like get a good enough version to put out into the world to see what happens. And fundamentally, like running a company when you're not profitable is shots on goal. You use your runway to figure out, hey, like how do I get the most bang for my buck? And, testing things quickly, getting things out there, is kind of the name of the game for a venture-backed business. And that's, I think that I'm definitely not a marketer, but I've had to do a lot of marketing-esque things in the last couple months. And yeah, I mean, like we use AI pretty heavily. I was on a call with an intern that we have, that is going to be doing a lot of the data analysis for us. And I was like, hey, like to be able to do this data analysis, you're going to have to write a lot of code. And that code is mostly boilerplate. Just stick it into ChatGPT and see what happens. Like it will give you the output of the boilerplate code that you need to be able to pull something from an API in like a repetitive fashion. And you don't have to think about that kind of stuff anymore. And it takes it from, 6 hours of writing that code to 5 minutes of writing that code. So you can focus on what actually matters and like test and iterate on different things, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's exactly right. Like, so I interviewed someone recently and thought they were super smart, was concerned they didn't have the technical skills that were required for this particular role. But I was impressed enough that we did the technical assessment. Assessment came back and they did phenomenally. And so I started plugging it into ChatGPT. I started taking the assignment that I had made, and I wanted to see if I could get the same output from ChatGPT, because my hunch was that they had done exactly that, had taken my assignment and had plugged it in and gotten an output, because I didn't think that they could write this code. And yeah, I mean, it seems like, after a few tries, I did get there, and I got a version that was close enough that I think, I stand by that. I think they use ChatGPT. So we're talking about it here. And the question was like, oh, well, I guess that's a bummer. They're not going to work out. And I was like, why wouldn't they work out? Like, what do I care if you wrote the code or if ChatGPT wrote the code? If the code does the things we need it to do, that's what matters. And so like, I would rather hire the person who's using these tools and thinking about efficiency, thinking about effectiveness, thinking about how can they do the most, than the person who's going to, and this is honestly, I need to get better about this, right? Like I enjoy learning new skills. I enjoy like going through and like getting good at things. It's not that good of a use of time to sit there and write from scratch the code for every email, or like there are drag and drop tools if you're okay with that solution, and the downsides of that. There's ChatGPT, there's all these options. You should be looking at people who want to solve problems efficiently so they can focus time on high leverage tasks as opposed to tasks that can be automated.
Yeah, I think the UX of those tools is just going to change so much where they directly integrate with ChatGPT in the future anyway, where I wouldn't be surprised if like a Braze, there's a toggle There's a couple of companies in the data science space doing this already. Like Hex is one of them, where you can write SQL or you can do magic generator and it'll just generate the SQL for you. And like, I would not be surprised if in like even just a couple months or a couple weeks, something like a Braze, where, you know, the section where you write the custom HTML code to fix and move different things, it has an extra button right next to it on that little toggle flipper thing, where you can just say, hey, I want this image to actually be in this position with this other thing on the right side of it. And it just writes it for you. And like, you just like get rid of the ability to have to do that kind of thing anyway. And so I think that makes a ton of sense. Like being able to effectively communicate what you want to be able to do. It doesn't matter if you're putting up prefab slabs of drywall or like mixing it yourself. You're getting to the end result is the thing that matters. You end up having a house, right? Like,
I think you should be like, I think more and more now, I think this is a time for people who, again, don't see themselves as marketers or have a breadth of experience, but honestly a depth of experience. This is a time where I think they can thrive. Because it comes to creative problem solving, right? Like I actually got a great bit of cold out, or not even cold outreach. It was kind of warm outreach from a platform that I had said we're not going to move forward with. But I think the solution I think would work, and this approach would work pretty well for cold outreach too, where they sent me an email. I haven't talked to them in months, and it said, hey, we saw you're hiring for this role. Let me tell you how our platform will actually make it so you don't even need to hire that job. Like we got you covered. And I thought that was a brilliant little piece. Like, we know hiring sucks. It takes time. It takes effort. It's expensive. If you get it wrong, like that's really expensive. There's time to onboard and ramp somebody up. They take PTO. They have life come up. They don't work nights and weekends, right? Like all these things. And they're saying, we have a tool. All you have to do is pay less and get the same value. That was pretty good. And like you could automate that pretty decently with like a couple, literally using Zapier or Make or something like that, and just like set a job alert on LinkedIn. Whenever you get that job alert, automate a cold email to that hiring manager, or find that VP or whatever, right? Like, I think there's a lot of things that now become just a creative problem solving game, which is awesome.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's a little bit more fun too, right? Like, I think that more people that go into marketing and go into these roles, as somebody who's had to, from time to time, sit with a customer who doesn't necessarily know how to like format emails and have to figure out exactly like, what is this iterable template doing? How do I like change where the button positioning is or the color? It's not fun. Like, that's not the fun part of engineering. It's not the fun part of coding. Nobody goes into this, I think, thinking that that's what they want to be like. That's what they want to be able to do. People, get into marketing for very different reasons, but one of those could be telling a story, being good at selling products. And I think you get to spend a lot more time doing what matters and a lot less time doing the BS part of it, which I think is pretty cool.
I think we've talked about this on the podcast before. I definitely talk about it in my team all the time. Of you need a level of awareness about remembering the big picture and why you're doing things, because I think we as humans are very good about being process oriented. And so once we start a task, we get good at like, okay, here's my checklist for the day. I'm going to do one LinkedIn post. I'm going to write half a blog. I'm going to do 5 bits of cold outreach. And I'm going to look at Google Analytics today. And like, that's most of my day, and we'll see what happens after that. Like, you need to get back to the why. And so when you can automate a lot of those things, it allows you to focus on the bigger picture, the higher leverage things than just making sure you check the box and got your LinkedIn post for the day, and making sure you check the box and got a tweet out and an Instagram post. Like, those little things that are important. Don't get me wrong. Like, you need to post regularly to keep getting impressions and to keep being shown. And the more you post, the more you will get displayed. So there's reasons to do all that. But is that really the way you want to be leveraging the talent that you brought in, is just to think about a new pithy joke to go on Twitter? Is that the right use of time? You know what I mean? Like, if they're smart enough to come up with a great Twitter joke that's going to go viral, they're probably smart enough to do something significantly more valuable for you.
Yeah.
And so I do think this is a time where, I think we kind of had that wave, I guess maybe in like 2010 to 2015, where like everyone was all about being a growth hacker, and like, the Sean Ellis growth hack ICE system. And like, I think good things came out of that. I think like there were some great frameworks that came out of that. The idea of a growth team and it being multidisciplinary came out of that. Like, I think that's all great. But it did start to make companies look for people that were, part engineer, part data person, part marketer. And that's cool. And I think that this is an extension of that, but in an even more positive direction, where just smart people who want to do cool things and be creative will thrive. And people who are scared of losing their job are going to be even more at risk of losing their job, because they're going to like try and dig their heels in and protect, like, again, this is partially me giving myself a pep talk, but my email code is sacrosanct, so I'm going to keep writing it, and that's what we need to do. Like, that's not a good fit. Time for you to adapt and do something bigger.
I liked it a lot. I think there's parallels to that in engineering too. But I won't go into that right now, where it's
is it like Copilot and stuff?
Yeah, we use Copilot. But I think also, like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I'm not I'm kind of a data person turned engineer, but there's a lot of a lot of people they take pride in the craft, and I think if you like get rid of that, but I just think fundamentally, like, being able to have leverage on top of creating software, creating assets, all that kind of stuff is kind of what this has given us. Like, we get to spend just a lot more time doing the thing we want. There are like, it is interesting because like there are downsides. I think I think the landscape is gonna fundamentally shift a little bit, because there are like obviously like downsides to. Okay, let me backtrack a little bit. A lot of what AI is good at, and what it's good at giving us, is it's previously things that were quote unquote soft skills, right? Like the other day, for example, like you can use software to automate actions that, were pretty much exactly the same every single time. But the thing that AI lets you do is you can make an API call to ChatGPT, and you can say, I think the world is gonna. I think the world is going to fundamentally shift a little bit here, because AI gives us the ability to automate what we like to call like slightly softer skills. Like conventional software is really, really good at taking a pattern, and if the pattern is exactly the same every single time, you can write something to automate that pattern, right? Like, if I know that I need to add a .com to the end of every single, list of companies in a list, then, I can write a script to do that. You can do that in Google Sheets. However, if I want to take that same list of company names and I want to, figure out, maybe they're not all .com anymore. Maybe they're getcotera.com, or they've got a prefix on it, or the ending is different. And you want to have something go through and check each of those and Google them and figure out what the domain is. Suddenly, you used to have a person do that, right? Whether it's a low-level person that you hire for a couple bucks an hour, or whether it's you, suddenly you can now make an API call to ChatGPT and say, hey, what's the domain for this address? And then put it into the next thing of this Google Sheet. And suddenly, like, these things that were slightly softer and slightly blurrier, you can get a automated bot to do. However, I do think that we are going to see a lot of jobs, or people have to switch to be able to think about, things like trust and safety, think about kind of the after effects that come out of this. Because these models aren't perfect, right? Like, one time out of 100, they'll fail, or even like one time out of 1,000 if they fail. If you personalize everything, or you use them for, tons and tons of different processes, you will probably get a outcome 1 out of 1,000,000 times that will probably cause like reputational brand damage. And we probably have to start thinking about some of the other things that come out of it. Like, a good example of this is, I was pulling this up while we were talking earlier, but there's a grocery store chain in New Zealand that like bought a piece of AI software that looked at what a customer had bought on their receipt, their most recent receipt from the grocery store, and it would suggest recipes based on the items that they bought. The problem that we run into is somebody bought, deli meat, they bought bread, they brought cheese, they brought, some mustard, and they also bought bleach. And so rather than being able to be smart enough to remove the bleach from the equation and give them a recipe for a regular turkey sandwich, it gave them a recipe for a poison sandwich, which is just one of those things where it's like a haha funny, like AI goofed up. But I think if you have a sample of like literally billions of events and billions of like things that are written by AI, like I think that people are going to have to get better. Or one of the things that we're going to have to start figuring out how to test for is the, precision of a language almost. Like it's almost like getting people to be better at English and tying, honestly, like legalese, right? Like tying in the loopholes and telling like the system that, hey, like you can operate within these parameters and you can't do this and you can't do that, and running tests and seeing like what ends up happening and retraining models. It'll be super interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, because the tough part there is, right, it's like that's a major error, but it's not an error in like the engineering sense of like you aren't getting like a 400 code and then like, oh, let's check the logs and see why this failed. That is undetectable until somebody writes in or somebody like made that sandwich and died and it makes the news or they sue you or whatever, right? Like there's not there right now, unless you have your system be like, write this thing, then send it through our own other automated QA that we have. And then if it passes this checklist, send it out. Like otherwise that's undetectable right now. And I think that's the terrifying part. That truly is, right? Like, I mean, you see it with like the hysterical, Google suggested search stuff, where it's just saying outlandish things right now. And that's especially as these companies are, in like an arms race to gain dominance in this AI world. You are going to see some of these errors and misses in governance, and that is pretty scary.
I think a good thing that this reminded me of is, have you seen those like little magic buttons that are designed to foster conversation underneath LinkedIn posts? Where here, if I pull up LinkedIn,
yeah.
There was one that I saw that was kind of bad the other day where somebody was posting about having lost a treasured colleague, and it literally said, what does this what was this person famous for in their job? And like, imagine like clicking that underneath like a post lamenting the loss of like a colleague.
I mean, I saw one yesterday, the day before. I guess it was yesterday. It was yesterday was June 6th. June 6th this year was the 80th anniversary of Operation Overlord, or D-Day. And so it was like a commemoration post about that on LinkedIn. And the suggested thing was like, talk about how listening as a leader could have prevented some of the pain here or something like that. And it's like, whoa, I don't think that like soft skills like active listening were what would have helped it in D-Day. Like, I think that was not a great suggestion. Like,
yeah. Not great. I'm looking at one right now, and like they're also just like, I think quality is going to be bad. Like I don't know. I feel like you can kind of tell when a cold email has been written by ChatGPT now. Like it's like overly technical. It's overly bad. I think like with the rise of these systems, we're also going to like have to figure out how to like increase quality, increase personalization. I think AI is fine actually if if you're sending somebody an email and it's just like a random, like, I don't know, it's like slightly better mail merge. People I think are very good at like filtering that kind of stuff out now. But going along the same thing, I'm looking at a LinkedIn post about somebody trying to hire a CSM where it's like, hey, we're looking for a CSM with a top strong technical background. And underneath the first one is, what does a CSM do? And it's, well, like, obviously, like, you're not going to comment on this guy's like post being like, what does a CSM do? Like, have it be slightly more, I don't know. There's just certain UX.
But you know what? Like, maybe that's some great AI engineering in like go ahead and help this guy filter out the wrong ones, right? Like, hey, we're going to give you 2 options. If you respond with this one, you're an idiot and you don't deserve this job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, like, yeah, you can, right? Like the Chat GPT default state, the adjectives they use are ridiculous, right? Like they're so superlative and over the top, and they're just words that no one uses.
Yeah, I think it's because it's trained on academic papers. Is the funny thing is like a lot of them are like
which
trained
also
on like
no one talks like you nerds.
Yeah, academics. I wonder how many academics listen to our podcast.
It is interesting to think about, but I think there's future states where like even like training a custom, like it's already not that hard to train a custom GPT, but like that's going to get easier and easier, right? Getting voice and tone right. And having it be specific to your company, that'll be faster and easier. Brand guidelines into, mid journeys or these other design ones will be easier, and so you'll be able to start to set the left and right limits for them faster, better, easier. I think it's really cool, and I do think that it's as significant as like, the proliferation of the internet was to the marketing world. Like that changed everything. And I think that there were similarly marketers in the late 90s, early 2000s who were lamenting this fad that was going to be the internet, and digital marketing was an offshoot, and it was still really all about advertising and stuff. And now it's like, okay, well, that one didn't pan out. Digital marketing is stuck around, right? But you had to adapt if you wanted to thrive. And I think that that's kind of where we're at now too, is this isn't, I don't think marketers are out of jobs. I don't think that you have to worry about it that way. I think you just have to learn a new skill set and change the way you approach problem solving.
Yeah, no, nobody's losing their jobs. You just have to, I don't know, it keeps life interesting, right? You get to learn a new skill, you get to become better at something.
Yeah, and I think for people like, I'm not an engineer. There are a lot of things that I've always thought like, hey, this would be a really cool flow if I could do this. Now I just need to get the end resources to like do simple API calls and webhooks to connect all these 10 disparate systems. Well, like that was never going to be something that I was able to get end resources for, because it's never the most high leverage opportunity for them, or the biggest problem that we need our eng team to solve. Now that, like, I mean, truly, like, Zapier and Make are 2 of the coolest tools that exist. Like everyone should be using those. And those have been around for a long time, let alone like now connecting, again, they have integrations with ChatGPT. They have integrations with like Claude, and everything can now be connected into workflows. We always complained about things being in 10 different tools. Well, now you can automate things going into one tool without an engineer building all these APIs and stuff like that, right? Like, so like, everything we've asked for as marketers, everything we've ever complained about as marketers, is now at your fingertips. And now we're complaining that that AI is going to take our jobs, and we have to learn something new. Like this is just, we got what we asked for.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. I think that's a good place to wrap it up, actually. Anything else?
Apply for jobs at Built.
Yeah, everyone manually linked. He will give you a job. If you send him a LinkedIn message, he will
send me a
job.
really clever LinkedIn message, and you're hired.
That's all it takes. Have ChatGPT send 100 messages and then just send it to
spam me, baby.
Spam him. But yeah, cool. Thanks everyone for listening. And until next time.